Very fascinating presentation, which I believe covered all the important issues of our history, economy and politics. You also very well underscored the principal problem that of the balance of power heavily tilting in favor of the army. And also you ended your presentation with pointing out so many promising, issues, and I think that are very crucially important for the youth of Pakistan. That will, it goes without saying, determine which way Pakistan goes in the future. But when you say that the problem that we had in terms of the balance of power heavily tilting in favor of the army was somehow an outcome of ambitious generals, I think it is a bit simplistic. For look at the 1990s, two governments of People's Party and two governments of Nawaz Sharif being dismissed by presidents who, were clearly acting on behalf of the army. I think we should look at this issue from a more institutional point of view, rather than limiting to, the personal ambitions of generals. Because what was happening somehow was that it was very natural that whenever a civilian government was being elected, a time was coming when it was reasserting, and whenever the army as an institution felt that this reassertion was threatening their traditional hold over politics, they were creating a reason for dismissal. Having said that, let me come to the current situation. It seems to me that obviously if the army has dominated, it is still having a game plan. In my humble opinion, it seems to me, whatever the speculative talk that we have, that it may be dominated by a single point agenda of keeping the PML-N out, because this is perhaps the only party which has understood the problem and is trying to rectify it. So what counter strategy you have, especially in terms of the next elections? Because I believe it is possible that even if army has dominated directly or indirectly, if we look at Turkey's case, the AKP comes to power in 2002, and each successive elections it has increased its political profile. And in Turkey, what has happened is a role reversal, that now basically, effectively, civilians are dominating the military. So I think my question is that what counter strategies that you have, if what I believe that the army may be planning to keep the PML-N out. And also taking this opportunity, let me thank you, it's a personal gratitude for your kindness, that in terms of the Pakistan chair at Oxford University, if you remember, I came to you, and in fact to resolve the same issue, that is an indirect outcome of the military domination of politics. It has extended to every sphere. In terms of the security clearance, and you were very kind, and I really offer my personal gratitude for showing tremendous respect for the educationists in Pakistan. Thank you very much.
I think your question and observation is very valid. I think the best defense against such conspiracies can only come from people of Pakistan. If they understand that what is the conspiracy, and they have to be on the side of the people rather than allow the establishment to again keep their hold on politics through their different schemes. So we have certain ideas, and you will see in the months to come, we will come out, be more actively engaging people of Pakistan. And let me also say that establishment has their designs, but in the end it is always the people who prevail. I can give you examples from every election. In 1988, the establishment design was to keep Benazir out of power, and they went out of it. But she won the election. In 1990, the establishment's design was not to allow Nawaz Sharif to be the Prime Minister. Their choice was Ghulam Mustafa Jatoi. But then it was Mr. Sharif who got more seats in the National Assembly, and they could not stop him. In 93, establishment did not want Benazir Bhutto to be the Prime Minister for the second term. Their horse they were betting on was Hamid Nasir Chattha. But the Chattha League did not win enough seats. People's Party got more seats, so they could not succeed, and Benazir Bhutto became Prime Minister for the second term. In 97 election, their design was to go for a hung parliament, because a party getting 2/3 majority was a recipe for disaster for the establishment. So they had pitched everything in a way that there would be a hung parliament, and after a while we will then discard them and change it. But the results came out heavily in favor of PML-N, and as a result of that 2/3 majority, PML-N abolished the 8th Amendment, which had been put in by General Ziaul with consensus, and that again set up alarm bells, and there was this judicial crisis and other conspiracies which were hatched. So in 2002, they wanted to give Q League 2/3 majority. They failed, and finally Musharraf had to make a commitment with MMA that I will give up my uniform in order to get the 2/3 majority. In 2008, the game plan was through NRO to have 2/3 majority for People's Party and Q League combined, and both will give helping hand to General Musharraf to indemnify 3rd November unconstitutional action. But then PML-N emerged from within, and that 2/3 majority was denied, and that indemnity could not materialize. So in the end, what happens is that the elections start, the dynamics start, the debate takes place, and people then make a much more informed choice that how is their vote going to impact the future course of politics, the future course of events. So even though they may start with some very different or romantic ideas, but finally they make a very pragmatic choice, so that I believe and see that in the next election there will be these two basic questions which people will have to answer. One fundamental question people have seen in past some years, that again how the establishment is again trying to influence the politics. So that will be one of the issues. And the second important issue is that the next election is going to turn into a referendum on the performance of Zardari regime. So whether you want them another 5 years, want to give them another 5 years, or you want them to be thrown out. Now when this becomes the defining issue, that for future of Pakistan you want 5 more years for Zardari regime, or you want them to go out. So then people will be, I think, very more pragmatic, and they may not exercise their option in a way that 6 months before elections it looks like. Because in 93, I remember, there was a similar situation where establishment used Jamaat Islami and Islamic Front to divide PML-N votes. And even though we had more votes than People's Party in 93 elections, we had 8 million, about 8 million something, People's Party had 7 point some million votes. We had more votes, but because Jamaat Islami was able to divide votes on 27 seats, we lost 25 seats with close margins. And People's Party came into power. So that is a danger, and that is why what you see after the judges' movement, there were some projects launched by the establishment because they became very fearful that Mr. Sharif and PML-N might again get 2/3 majority, and if they get 2/3 majority, this will be very detrimental for their interest. So religious parties were launched, some other projects were launched to make sure that PML-N loses 30-40 seats in division of votes, and there is another hung parliament. And I honestly believe that another hung parliament will be a recipe for disaster. We cannot afford another hung parliament, because in a hung parliament what you see is that the small parties which are in the lap of establishment, they control and hijack the agenda, and then all of your programs or initiatives are compromised. You are just dancing to the demands of your coalition partners, and then status quo prevails. Status quo is not any part of solution for Pakistan.
Sir, I have one comment and then one question. So I think most of us would agree here that whatever you said about military dictatorship, I think no matter how inefficient the civil government is, military should never take over. But I think we should also take into account that there is a long charge sheet against the traditional parties, the two mainstream parties, and not all of that charge sheet is based on propaganda. There is a lot of truth in that as well. So I think as citizens, probably either we correct that or we need to look for replacements. And when you talk about replacements, then probably there's a lot of talk about PTI right now. Now, when you look at the critique which PML-N makes on PTI, a lot of it again is based on propaganda. And because right now we don't have any proof about, their links with establishment, or because especially after their rally in Lahore, if you see the first line that came out from the PML-N was that, this rally is being directed by the presidency. But later on they switched, I think that was clearly on the media. And later on it was said that this was done by the establishment. So I would say that, and I would like to know your opinion on this, that don't you think that if the critique is based more on merit, based more on issues, so let's say they're bringing in the same old forces, or let's say they don't have the expertise to manage the economy or take Pakistan forward, if it's based on that, then probably we might think about some other option other than PTI. But if it's simply based on this propaganda, and when the PML-N leaders are asked that what is your proof that they have links with the establishment, the answer is that we give the proof at the right time. So
I agree with you totally. I think the critique should be based on merit. It should be based on policies, and that is what we believe. I mean, I would not, even though there is a circumstantial evidence, and prima facie, you can very easily judge. Why is it that in 6 months, Mr. Imran Khan was only focusing on Faisalabad, Gujranwala and Lahore? If you plot his visits, and if you plot where in last 1 year they have been focusing, that is the whole belt where PML-N was strong. I mean, circumstantially, उन सारी खेल को समझना is not very difficult, but nevertheless, knowing what is the background, I even confessed that what has helped establishment to play this is that traditional parties were so entrenched in their traditional power support or their support structures that they missed to see this new emerging young educated middle class which was vying for more political role in the society. And they were late in reaching them. But as an outsider, Imran Khan and PTI probably were able to go to them and just gave them one side of the story and have them on their side. Just as in India, because the